Hello, this is Kendra, and this is me showing up a little bit jet lagged and a little bit head coldy, and honestly don't feel tip top at my best or at the top of my game here, but this is me showing up anyway. I see a couple of faces popping up there, and if you can't hear me, because again I've got a little head cold situation going on, maybe just wave and holler and say we can't hear you. And if the sound is good, you can just give me a little thumbs up, or all the hearts. I love the hearts when they come over. Oh, thank you, Kate. I'm glad. So again, I don't feel at my best right now. Thanks, Todd. I'm glad you can hear me. But this is something that I've wanted to talk about for a while and just share some pieces. Hey, Stephanie. And please, so this is a piece that I want to share a little bit about, but as I share, please, offer your experiences, bring your questions, let's let this be a bit of a dialogue if we can. That would feel awesome to me. So some of it is certainly comes from my own experience, and then just seems to have shown up in my world a lot lately, both in clients and in friends and colleagues, is something around I'd hear, and really I'm speaking a lot about romantic relationship here. When I say this idea, why love isn't enough, or why I hear a lot about but I love him, or but he loves me, or some version of that. And the examples I have all seem to be heterosexual couples. So that's just how I'm going to talk right now, but I think this is applicable. And in some ways, frankly, probably applies to our friendships as well. But the realm that it seems to have been coming into my world lately is a lot of heterosexual relationships. So there it is. So why love isn't enough. And I would say the bottom line for me about this is that I really believe that love is a verb. It's both. I'll just say it's both. And that it's both I guess a noun. I don't know. It's been a long time since I was in a I can't even think what it's called, a grammar class, some sort of, but it's like a thing. It's like a feeling we have. It's a way we feel about or towards people, but it's also a verb, which means it's something that we do. It's the way that we love people. It's a way of actually being or giving. And in previous videos, I've talked a lot about generosity and different ways of being generous, and also about boundaries. So both of those come into play in this as well, and I'm going to try to set those aside because I've talked about them before, and stick with this specific piece here. I'm going to pause. I just saw a comment come through. Kate says, I loved my ex and it wasn't enough, sadly, in our case, and it hurts and is still raw. I wanted it to be enough, but we didn't treat love as a verb. Yes, right, exactly. It takes more than saying it and feeling it. And so I'm going to drop this little piece in because I don't want to forget it. And I don't mean this really towards you, Kate, because so many of us say this. I've said this, I hear it a lot, oh, but it wasn't enough. And I get why I've said that. I get why you might have said that in that comment, Kate. because it didn't have the intended lasting outcome in a particular form. But I want to also bring into this conversation really letting go of any idea that a lasting or a lifetime monogamous relationship or marriage is the end-all be-all, or that's what it means, that it was enough. So I do want to take that out of there because, hi Lisa. This is me gathering my scattered thoughts. So I'm going to set that aside for a moment, and I really hope I don't forget to come back to it because I believe that's a really important point. But I want to go first to this piece around love as a verb. And, you know, I'm sure our circumstances were really different, Kate, but I've also, like, I had the experience of loving my ex-husband so much, like, so much, and really, you know, I mean, falling in love, and I know he loved and frankly loves me. And there came a point in our relationship where we treated each other frankly horribly. I remember actually looking at him at one point, and I think I even said something to this effect, but I was thinking, I was like, this is like not us. Obviously it was, we were the ones doing it, but the people outside of us, I think, if they had really known the extent of our behaviors towards each other, they would have been shocked. Like, it was just not who I either want to be or know myself to be. It's not who he wants to be or who I knew him to be, like actually who we are as our deepest or biggest or widest selves. We were behaving horribly towards each other. And this is also not me saying that if you do that, you know, if you like, you know, I mean, first of all, we all make mistakes. We all go through phases. We all don't know what we don't know until we know it, you know, so we can do better. It's certainly not that we can't do better, but to be in a relationship where you're, for instance, I'll just go from the perspective of being treated really poorly, like being spoken to in unkind ways, being yelled at, being threatened, being like just having that, and then to say like, oh, but I know that underneath that he loves me. Frankly, it doesn't matter. I'm sure he does, but to stay and to not set really clear boundaries, again, which I think it was last week even, or a couple weeks ago, did a whole piece on boundaries. And actually, I believe that boundaries are immensely loving acts. So to not set boundaries and to sort of keep falling back on quote unquote love, I believe does an enormous disservice, not only to ourselves, but to the other person. So I'm going to pause again and just check in here. I wonder how other people do this. Do they say that or they just engage? Ulysses said, what happens when your loved one wants more? Are you expressing love with words than with actions? I think what you're saying or what you're asking is, what happens when a person that you love wants more words than actions? Like that's their, and this goes, I can't think of what his name is right now, but you know, there's a great book called I think it's the five love languages. And it speaks to, you know, it's one lens to look at giving and receiving love, and words of praise is one of them. And I consider words of praise to be an action. And I am a massive words of praise person. So I don't know if this is quite what you're experiencing, but I can say from my experience, that doesn't come naturally to my partner. That's not one of his love languages. And he doesn't even really like to be praised. He gets really like uncomfortable. And so I've found, you know, he is more of like an acts of service and physical touch kind of a person. And so again, love is a verb for me. I'm actually not a physical touch love language person. I mean, I think we all want and need touch, and sexually and non-sexually, but as an actual way that I receive love, it's not one of my primary ways. And so it's taken attention and intention on my part to actually to reach out and touch him in the ways that he loves to be touched, more than I would naturally think to. And this goes to your question, Ulysses, is I know that it's taken like attention and intention on his part to like tell me what he loves about me, and to reach out with words in a certain way, because it doesn't come quote unquote naturally. So I hope that answers your question. Give me a follow-up there if not. So again, it actually is, I do, I think love languages are fantastic. Totally there with you, Rachel. Oh, you're all the love languages. Well, we're all of them. You just want it all. I do believe that we are all of them, and we have, it seems for the most part that people have like one that's super primary and one that's secondary, like the ones where it's like, oh my God, if I don't get this, I literally feel like I'm is there a word that's the equivalent of starving but for water? Anyway, I need water in the desert. So it's important to know what those are. That's an act of generosity, is to actually know what yours are, so that you can share that with those who love you and let them love you better. Kate says, I think I am too, Rachel. I need all of it, and I express it in many ways too. Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Like it is all of it, for sure. I think like all things, we are in some way all of it. So including in that being spoken to in certain ways. So I didn't mean actions like a verb, as in that was somehow eliminating words from the equation, but treating somebody a certain way, which again, I mean, I think I spoke to kind of an extreme, but it can be subtle. I mean, honestly, if you're in partnership with someone and you let them know, like with an open heart and really generously, like please, I love to be loved in this way, and you're met with like, I can't do that, or that's not me, or simply refusing over and over and over again. I please don't take this as me saying that you shouldn't be with that person, or that that's the end all be all of your relationship. But I would encourage you to sit with like, wow, I'm choosing someone who refuses to love me in a way that I really need to be loved. So that's what I mean by a verb, is that it actually does. Some of it's going to come, like it's just going to pour out of us so easily. But the doing of life is, it takes some effort. Like inertia is at play in these human bodies, and when we're in the momentum, we stay in the momentum. But when we hit that place of pause, often it takes something to actually move into the loving again, as a verb, as a doing being, if you will. Stephanie says, what about the difference between being in love versus loving? Not sure if I said that clearly. So the way that I hear that again is a lot of what I spoke to at the beginning, and let me know if this isn't clear. But you can be totally, oh yeah, I hope it's not stuck for me. I'm going to keep going and see what happens. So in response to Stephanie is that we can totally be in love with someone. And I'm not even saying that that's, that it's not true. Like I really believe you can be in love with someone and and you can be unwilling to do the work of loving them. And again, far be it for me to say what that actually means about whether you should stay with a person or not stay with a person. But I think more than anything, let this be an encouragement to be honest with yourself, primarily with yourself, both about the places like, wow, I am unwilling to offer, like to do love in that way. And also like, wow, I am choosing to stay with a person who doesn't treat me in a loving way, or who is refusing to offer me love. And sometimes, again, we have to be honest about, I have not let them know how they can give me love. I have not let them know. And I can't really expect them to know if I'm not honest. But and that also comes to this verb, which is that a lot of us like to, so I think of it as kind of a cop-out. It's like a cop-out to say like, well, I just want to be loved, or I feel loved when I'm respected, or things that are broader like that. And it's much more vulnerable to say like, oh, I feel so loved when you do the dishes without me asking. Now, again, is that the make or break of a relationship, whether someone does the dishes without you asking? Probably not. But it's vulnerable to actually let somebody know, like, oh, I feel loved when I come in the door and you give me your full attention for 5 minutes, even when you're in the middle of something. Or you let me know when you can give me your full attention and you follow through. Like you actually, and can you feel the difference in saying that versus like, you never give me attention, or like, if you really loved me, you would put down whatever you're doing, right? There's this way of like, oh, I would feel so loved if you would do this, or when this happens, I feel so loved, or, you know, thank you for the times that you do this because I feel so loved when you do, right? That's a way of bringing it forward. That's open-hearted, that's kind, that's generous. So again, Ulysses said, thanks for your comments. I have heard of aromatic relationships. Is that, I don't know what that means. So I'm either going to have to look that up when we're done, or maybe you can do a little write-up and I can see, but like what an aromatic relationship is. I mean, I've heard about pheromones and I totally believe in that stuff. But so I don't know if that fits within the framework that I'm talking about or not, because I have actually never heard of that. So, oh shoot, what was that thing I wanted to remember at the beginning? I wonder if the comment will help me remember that. Oh yeah, okay. So it was the comment about it wasn't enough. And so in one sense, I'm saying that. I think that was even the title of my Facebook Live, like why love isn't enough. So, you know, it's really my fault. And there is something in it that I mean that, like, it's not enough to just say, I love you, or to say, oh, but he loves me, and let that just stand if truly you're not being loved as a verb. And I've given a lot of examples, but that is so personal. That's so personal. Let's see, I'm seeing some comments here. I'm gonna see if I can, but it's a personal piece to really find like, oh, this is how I know I'm loved. And then be willing, first is to own that to oneself, and then to be willing to share that in an open-hearted and vulnerable way. But then I do want to briefly at least touch on this piece of enough, which is, for instance, this enormous, like, passionate love that I had with my ex-husband. We have quite a deep and abiding love now, and I've found that it's it has still, there's still been an importance of actually actively loving each other, like listening and speaking kindly, making clear requests and follow through. Like there's all these ways that we love each other, even though we haven't been in romantic or sexual or intimate partnership for, I don't know, 7 years. And he's currently my neighbor. He probably lives about like 50 yards from my house, something 50 to 100 yards. Not great with distances and numbers. And it's like we have a right relationship, and our right relationship is not living together in the same house, and it's not having a sexual or intimate relationship, but it totally includes co-parenting. And because we have, certainly done our own personal work, that's key. But also because we have continued to love each other as a verb, and in those ways of listening, it did include actually living in the same condo for 11 days last winter in Mexico with his new girlfriend. So, but us I think even us like buying property and living on the same property together it has too much enmeshment, that it would not be our right relationship, and we wouldn't be able to love each other as well as we are right now. So that's the piece I wanted to touch on, like in the enough, is being willing to be honest enough about what is your right relationship with, this person or this person. Let's see, I want to go back through because I've seen a couple here. So I see the monogamy, but I'm not quite sure what that's referring to, Kate. And then, Stephanie, right, follow through when a promise is given. So it's like, God, I feel so loved when you do what you say you're going to do. I just feel, and this is such a beautiful example actually, because it's one of those ones where many of us would say like, duh, that's the definition of respect, or that's the definition of love, or like of course. But when we do that to another person, first of all, there's a way that we stop being vulnerable in saying like, well, I need that. Maybe you don't. Maybe this other person just truly, it doesn't bother them. It's not part of their love makeup. It just doesn't, it's neither here nor there. And it's allowing, like, that could be totally true for this person. And even if that's totally true for them and doesn't mean anything about how much they love me, I actually need that to feel loved. And that's a deep act of love for yourself to admit it. And then it's generous to be willing to let the other person know, like, I need this in order to feel loved. Like, over time, I need this. Kate says, it's tough when you love more than one person at once too. And true, not all relationships are meant to last. I think we do love many, many people at a time, and it is, again, it comes back to what is the right relationship with each person or each set of people. And if you're actually looking at something that's non-monogamy or some version of polyamory, it takes a lot to it takes a lot of honesty on everybody's part to acknowledge what they really want and need, so that everybody involved can love and be loved well, again, as a verb. I can say like, oh, well, that's nice, you love each other, I love your love or something. But for instance, if I was in a polyamorous relationship and maybe it's really important to me that I be friends with the other women, or maybe it's really important to me that I don't, right? Like it's finding out what is truly the truth of that. And then again, it comes down to like, is my partner or partners, are they willing to actually love me the way that I need to be loved? And I want to be clear that this isn't like, you have to get every single thing you want at every point in relationship, or if your person doesn't, if they don't wash the dishes without you asking, and they don't do this, and they, all these, that it becomes like a nitpicky thing. But I just felt like I had to speak to this because I was hearing so much from like, oh, but they love me, or oh, but we love each other. And to me, that's just one piece of the puzzle. It's like, I have no doubt. I am sure that you love each other immensely, and that from your heart is just like so much love. But are they and are you willing to do love also beyond just feel it? And I believe that that's incredibly important to, I believe that's important to any relationship, I guess, lasting or not. You could have something that was much shorter and still, like, can we do love? I guess this really fits in with my piece about generosity. Are we generous enough? Are they generous enough? Can we kind of get over ourselves? Because relationship is about more than one person. And so being willing, I gave that example about my partner and it's like my preference, my just like, innate preference isn't always to like reach out and squeeze him in a particular way that has him feel really loved. And his innate preference isn't to like shower me with words of praise. But we got over our preference in order to love each other as a verb in the ways that actually have us feel loved. And Kate says, I so wish my ex and I were still loving towards each other as friends and as people. I think your comment goes on to say, like, sort of, was it always this way? And yes and no. In a way of course, this made our life and our relationship much more challenging in one sense, that we have a son, we have a child together. And then in another way, frankly, it made it so much easier because we couldn't just avoid each other. And we were always more committed to the love in our family than we were to the format. Well, always is a strong word because, again, I spoke at the beginning. Man, we went through a doozy, and I am not proud of some of the ways that I behaved, and certainly I was very hurt in a certain way, and we needed a lot of space. I moved about 100 miles away, and now, like I said, we're neighbors, and so sometimes that's important. And again, I think it comes down to this piece. It's true with my current partner as well, that there was a point where we had taken space, and we had actually each dated other people. And when we came back together, we were really clear. We were like, if only if we can do this in a way that supports the love between us. And if we can't do that, then, having an intimate relationship, having a romantic and a sexual relationship, that's less important than that we continue to treat each other with love. And if we can't have sex and do that, then we need to stop having sex. Like the love was more important, right? And we found our way, which I'm immensely grateful for having found the way to do that and have both. And I'll, this is my bias for sure. I believe that piece, not that it, can't include sex, obviously, but I'm more committed to the love than I am to the format. And frankly, I say that to couples that I work with too. It's always my intention. If a couple wants to stay together, it's my intention to support them in that. But I have to say up front, because I only want people to work with me if they want to work in that way. And so I'll say, I'm more committed to the love between you than I am to the format of your relationship. And is that okay? Can we go from that perspective? Because that's just I believe that as humans, I really value that. Oh, a romantic, as in, got it. Okay, Ulysses, is a way, like not being in love with your partner, but not because anything about your partner in particular, but because you're not the type of person who falls in love. And I hate this. I can't see the full comment. There's like something that happens where it cuts it off because I'm on my phone, so it's small. So again, I haven't really looked into that. I don't want to speak fully, but again, it needs to be something that works for both people. So I believe that it's a cop-out. I think not just this, but any place that when we're in a relationship where we say, I love you, but then to say like, well, I just don't do that. That's not me. And be unwilling to meet our partner in some way that they need, I believe that's a cop-out. So you can be a romantic, but if your partner needs to be loved in a certain way, I believe that it's part of the work of being in relationship is to kind of step outside, like, oh, what I know to be me, to some extent. Again, it doesn't mean we have to do everything our partner wants. But at the very least, you know, and there's a place to say like, hey, I'm a romantic, like this kind of gooey thing that you see happening over here, I don't think that's ever going to happen for me. Is that okay with you? Is that going to be an okay relationship? This is kind of getting a little bit outside the scope of what I intended to talk about. But I believe I'm just gonna touch on this, and maybe I'll take it deeper in another Facebook Live. But I believe it's also a little bit our responsibilities to feel a little bit deeper about whether that's really true. Like, if, for instance, if I'm with somebody, or I know a couple like this, where the woman actually really wanted to be in a partnership, and the man didn't. And he was really, I mean, to his credit, he was totally upfront, completely transparent. That's not what I'm here for right now. There were a couple things about between them and some logistical things that he said, those are deal breakers for me in terms of being really partnered. But I like you, I love you, I love, this playful physical piece we can have. And she said, oh, that's okay with me. Well, actually, first she said, that's not okay with me, and they broke up. And to his credit, again, he totally honored that. But then she came back and said, actually, that's okay with me. And I don't actually know her well enough to know if this is totally true or not, but I challenged him to feel beneath what she was saying to whether that was truly okay. And that is a certain level of responsibility in relationship that not everyone is willing to take. To go like, oh, my partner's saying that it's okay, or this person I'm dating or sleeping with, or they're saying it's okay, but some part of me feels like it's not. And I just see us like if we are the ones who can feel that or see that, there is a place that I ultimately think it's our responsibility to say like, wow, I get that you're saying it's totally okay. Something doesn't feel right to me, even though you're saying it's okay, and free that person to have the kind of love that it seems like they truly want. Anyway, I think that's one for another Facebook Live. Let's see. I'm just gonna check in, and maybe if anyone has a last question or a comment, because I know that was a lot. That was a lot. But I think in closing, I want to circle back to the beginning, to this piece of, and it's really twofold. I want to circle back to the beginning and then make it clear that I don't mean that this is like an end all, be all, you have to get everything you want, or you deserve better, sort of that kind of place that many of us get into. But that it really comes down to the idea of love as a verb, deeper or beyond love as a feeling, and the importance of that. And I really agree with you, Kate. I see you saying here, love blinds us. Yeah, I agree. I see it in both men and women. I see it in many relationships, that somehow this feeling, and it's probably hormonal, some of it's probably evolutionary biology or these things, but I think we're sort of evolving in a way that can allow us to feel all that, and also both stand for ourselves and stand for our partners, our lovers, our people in a deeper way. Okay, so I'm going to say last question here from Rachel. How do you know when it's something you need to grow versus a need or a boundary? Well, my first response is in a lot of ways that it can be very helpful to get outside perspective. We're not always willing to listen to that. For instance, this is now, 20 years ago. It's weird to be able to say that, and I was like an adult then. Anyway, 20 years ago, I was in a relationship that there are a lot of ways that I grew, but there were also some sort of abusive, kind of emotionally, verbally abusive pieces to it. And I had some friends who said to me very clearly, this is not a good relationship for you, and he doesn't deserve you. And I wasn't ready to listen. And then years later, I was sitting with one of those friends, and it was after I had broken up with him, and I was like, why didn't you tell me? And she looked me straight in the eyes and she was like, Kendra, I did. So we're not always ready to hear it, but I do think outside perspective can be really useful here, in terms of like, where is this a place that I'm just afraid, or it's a habit and I could grow in staying with something. Or there are times to set boundaries. And so, that's where I'm going to go for now. So outside perspective. So if you have, it's one of the reasons I do think that like couples coaching or couples counseling is really valuable, because sometimes, a lot of times, frankly, I see people and they say like, I feel like I'm crazy. And so sometimes when you can get in the same place at the same time, it takes it a little bit out of that realm of like, am I crazy? I think that they were, like this, but now they're saying this. And hopefully also we have people in our lives that we're close enough to, good girlfriends, good guy friends, who are willing to be honest with us. But I guess the little piece that I'll say in there is that while I encourage people to not just like eject from relationships when it's hard, if there's anything that's hard, I do think that there's like, if our nervous systems are like inflamed, like if we're just kind of in anxiety or in trauma response, again, regardless, it doesn't actually mean that the other person's doing anything wrong. But that the way that that our beings are kind of clicking together has one of us or both of us kind of like in a state of aggravation, that boundaries can be useful that aren't boundaries like, I'm out of here, right? That's not really a boundary. That's like I don't know what that is, but like, I need to pause for this amount of time. And sometimes that can be, I need physical space, like I need literal physical space. Sometimes it can be, can we be together and just breathe, but stop talking about this, or, we're aggravating each other. Sometimes it can be, I need us to see like a couples counselor or a coach. I need us to do that, because I'm aware that I don't know how to handle this. Again, it takes personal responsibility. I don't know how to be with this. out of like, you're, you know, you always, you never, but like, I don't know how to deal with this. So sometimes boundaries are like pauses that give our nervous system time to relax so that we can re-engage. So I hope that helps a little bit, Rachel, and maybe you and I can talk about that too, and I can bring a fuller response to you and possibly to the world via Facebook Live on another day. So thank you for all of you who were here today live, and thank you to those who are watching the replay. And again, whether you were here live or watching the replay, I really loved all the comments today. It was so, it's like, I get a little disconcerted sometimes, but I love the back and the forth. Feels very alive to me, and I enjoy it. So thank you to all of you who brought your voices in, and your questions and your comments and your experiences. And please continue to do so, and I'll keep coming back to respond to ones that are new. Feel grateful for all of your witnessing and your listening and your sharing. And feels funny to say after this. I was going to say I love you. I hope this was helpful. Have a wonderful day. Ciao.